War started on Sunday, December 7th. Our communications officer had been called to the phone from his bed. All our fields in Oahu have been attacked. We stared at each other for fully a minute, wondering if it was a prank.
Clouds of war were gathering in late November of 1941. They could sense it, they could feel it here in the Pacific. The idea that the Japanese Navy would sail in the northern Pacific thousands of miles to get to Hawaii to deliver an attack of this magnitude was unimaginable. Sitting out in the Pacific are two isolated outposts of American command, Wake Island and Midway.
Midway is a coral atoll, about midway, hence the name, in the Pacific between the United States and the Far East.
Well, we found out after it happened, of course, and then, of course, we started getting communications. Pearl Harbor's been attacked. How bad is it?
On December 7th, we heard that Pearl Harbor had been bombed. They sent everyone out to their positions. They issued us live ammunition, which was, we did not usually have live ammunition out there.
At first we did, hard to believe it, that really happened. How in the hell could they get that close to Hawaii and do all the damage? We moved lock, stock, and barrel and went out to sand country and dug in the sand and slept in the sand.
On the morning of December 7th, Imperial Japanese Navy Task Force, attacked Pearl Harbor, caught it by surprise. And part of the Japanese plan was to bombard Midway in order to suppress the U.S. flying boats. The Japanese were concerned that the aircraft at Midway might be able to attack or vector other aircraft to attack the Japanese carrier force.
The attack on Midway occurred that night. Two Japanese destroyers, the Sakasami and the Ushio, that had originally been part of the Pearl Harbor fleet, Kido-Butai, the attack force, were ordered to go to Midway and to shell Sand Island, which they knew from their intelligence was the main island where the troops were, i.e. Marines, and naval aviation.
It was a relatively small-scale attack, but it accomplished the Japanese objective in that none of the PBY Catalinas went out looking for the Japanese carrier force.
Over 300 shells, large caliber 5-inch shells, were landing all over the island. The Marines were taking cover, manning guns, and they started to return fire.
We saw some brilliant flashes light the sky in the southwest. Our batteries of 5-inch guns answered the challenge.
Some of the guys could see the Japs on the ships. They were that close because it was within 50 caliber range. And now we know we're at war. Up to then we didn't know we were at war.
So I went up on the platform on the searchlight and I looked down the beam and there was a destroyer sitting right off the reef. All of its guns started to swing around and they cut loose on the light. Between the two of them, they fired a lot of rounds.
It wasn't scary, really. You were too damn busy finding what you're doing to get ready to. You got your O3, you got your ammunition, you got your cartridge bullets, you got it all filled up. That's what you were trained for.
The firefight that ensued between the Marine shoreside guns and the Japanese carried on for an hour. The Japanese ships retired, sensing they had done their job, and in a way they did. But now World War II had come to Midway.
From the captain, I learned the following. They hit our hangar and a plane that was inside. Another was smashed and lost in a takeoff crash. The pilot was killed. A third was damaged in a takeoff crash, but repaired.
The casualties were relatively small. 4 Americans died, I think 10 were wounded.
In the command post, which was also part of the power station, it was a reinforced concrete building. One of the rounds came right through a opening concrete port and then hit the top ceiling in there, which was fairly low, and threw shrapnel in all directions. First Lieutenant Cannon was hit with shrapnel in the pelvis.
Those windows were, wide, but they were also that thick of cement. So it was a lucky shot that went in there.
First Lieutenant George Cannon stayed at his post even after he had been severely wounded and ultimately died from loss of blood after first making sure all his people and the other wounded were taken care of. And so he was the first Marine to be awarded a Medal of Honor posthumously during World War II.
That night there were probably a lot of heroes out there that did their jobs. For the Japanese, they had done theirs. The opening engagement for the Battle for Midway had now started.
What it did was cause the United States Navy to then beef up the defenses of Midway Island. And so by the time the Battle of Midway occurs in June of 1942, every square inch of Midway Island is carpeted by Marine fortifications, anti-aircraft guns, as many aircraft as will possibly fit. So when the Japanese showed up, on the 4th of June, expecting to catch the island by surprise, they were actually surprised by how strong the defenses were.
It has been 80 years since the events of December 7, 1941, that swept the United States into World War II. The lands and waters of Midway Atoll were designated the Battle of Midway National Memorial in 2000 to remember and honor the sacrifices of the brave men that fought against overwhelming odds from this strategic military stronghold in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
Midway Atoll National Wildlife Refuge and Battle of Midway Memorial is a unique and special place. We have decided as a society that we must both protect America's national treasures and also preserve the important historic events that have shaped who we are. And for this, Midway will always serve a purpose of inspiring us, inspiring future generations, and reminding us of how we got to where we are today.